Okay, so welcome to this evening's STEM Industry in the North session. Tonight we're going to be focusing on the energy sector. And as I have already said, tonight's presentation is also being recorded. So what we do in these sessions is slightly different from some of our other STEM in the North sessions. We have external speakers joining us this evening who will be presenting for a little bit of time each. And then at the end, we will have time for questions, which obviously that sort of section will not record and put online. So you feel free to pop your questions in the chat as you think of them. And then what we'll do towards the latter half of the presentation, Mark will bring in any of the questions. And obviously, if you want to actually say your questions or things like that, we can use hands up or Mark can bring you in at that stage. So tonight, my name is Janie Irving, but my name's always Janie Irving, and I'm being joined by my colleague Mark Irwin, who's one of the other STEM education officers in the North team. And we're also joined by, and this is where I'm just checking, make sure I get all the company names right, we're joined by Gavin Mackay, who is the Head of Energy Industries at Highlands and Islands Enterprise. And we're joined by Leslie Buse, who is Quality Manager at EMEC, and Grace Ann Robertson, who is a marketing manager at Verloom, which I'm hoping I'm pronouncing correctly because the company has just branded that today, so I didn't have time to check. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to hear from the three presenters, and I'm going to hand over right now to Gavin, who's going to tell us a little bit about the energy sector overall. So I'm going to stop presenting.
Good evening. Hi, thank you for that introduction, Janie. My name is Gavin Mackay. I am Head of Energy Industries at Highlands Islands Enterprise. For those of you who are not familiar with Highlands Islands Enterprise, HIE, we are the Scottish Government's Economic and Community Development Agency for the north of Scotland and the islands. I don't have any slides this afternoon. I've stepped in to cover for a colleague. So you've got me. I'm going to give you an overview of the renewable energy sector in the region. And talk a little bit about some of the careers and pathways into the industry. So the Highlands and Islands, it's a diverse geography from Shetland to Argyll, Outer Hebrides to Murray. Is the region that HIE covers, so just over half of Scotland's landmass, but about 10% of the country's population. Our drivers or our rationale is to help build a prosperous, inclusive and sustainable economy across the Highlands and Islands, attracting more people to live, work, study, invest and visit. We work with businesses and social enterprises of all sizes, from light touch, providing advice, right the way through to providing property funding, loans and grants. Please feel free to sort of jump in with any questions as I go. I'm happy to take those, and but if not, we can capture those at the end. When you think about renewables, I'm sure you probably conjure up an image of a wind turbine, and you wouldn't be wrong, but it's the main source of renewable generation in Scotland. And has a key role to play in tackling climate change and cutting carbon emissions. And the targets in Scotland are amongst the most ambitious in the world. The Highlands and Islands have some of the best resources, which is an incredible boon, but we've also had a long history of renewable energy, which extends beyond the current growth in wind. So stemming right back to the 30s with the original hydro schemes, which really came into their own in the 50s, and it was a real revolution for the region, bringing leading technology and innovation into the region. And it's actually now the Highlands and Islands are synonymous with technology and innovation, with the world's first deep water offshore wind turbines sited in the Moray Firth, the world's first grid-connected waving tidal test facility at EMEC in Orkney, and we'll hear from EMEC later this afternoon. Renewable energy supports thousands of jobs in Scotland across a range of disciplines: project managers, engineers, environmental consultants, lawyers and analysts. In 2019, Fraser of Allender Institute undertook some work which was landing on there being about 22,500 FTEs in renewables. I think that number is increasing quite exponentially at the moment. Development of skills and expertise in renewables is absolutely critical to help us realise the industry's ambitions. Scotland's universities and college have a fantastic range of courses and apprenticeships, undergrad through to postgrad and masters. It's all there. And some incredible reputations across many of those disciplines as well. In terms of other pathways, I'm sure people will be familiar with Skills Development Scotland and My World of Work, which is a great starting point, a resource for anyone at a young age who may be considering a career in the energy sector. Traditionally or historically, energy has been fairly male-dominated, particularly if we look at oil and gas. But as we transition to cleaner, greener industries, it's supporting a much more diverse workforce, which is to be applauded, and we need to work hard at ensuring that remains the case and only increases. At HIE, we're keen to see inclusivity across all sectors, and we're working with partners to try and make this a reality. We're doing a campaign currently with Scottish Renewables to shine a spotlight on exceptional women working in renewables. There's many other routes into renewables. Students can leave school and embark on a college and university courses, be that in engineering, economics, law, any of the multitude of skills that are required. And really the list is endless. I probably need to mention as well the Energy Skills Partnership. That's a collaboration of Scotland's colleges and industry partners established to increase Scotland's capability and capacity to deliver the right skills for energy and engineering and construction. As the college sector agency for engineering, energy and construction, they have a partnership across all of Scotland's colleges, or a number of Scotland's colleges, and are pretty responsive to industry demands for skills. They have a huge bank of STEM resources, and that's aimed at pupils ages 4 to 17. There's teaching resources, competitions, educational videos, experiments, and more. And of course, there's the Newton rooms throughout the Highlands and Islands. I was just going to kind of wrap up by saying that you can't really turn on the news now without there being a story related to energy, whether that's ever rising prices, climate change and the race to net zero, or exciting developments in, for example, offshore wind, as we saw just a week and a half ago with the Crown Estate Scotland announcing lease options for 17 projects around Scotland, which could generate 25 gigawatts of electricity. What does that mean? Well, 1 gigawatt will power about 750,000 homes, 750,000. Scotland has about 2.4 million homes. So we can see that we're starting to punch above our weight in terms of ambition in that race to net zero, and to be a net exporter of renewable electricity. And with ScotWind, I think we potentially get two industries for the price of one, as a grid connection challenges are very real in Scotland. And I think a lot of these projects will look towards the large-scale production of green hydrogen and exports as their route to market for this renewable electricity. So it's an incredibly exciting time to be involved in renewables. The growth is huge. I might be a bit biased, but it really is an exciting sector to work in. And Scotland and the Highlands Islands are really ambitious and in the bid to become one of the leading nations in the race to net zero. So I'm going to pause there or wind up there and say thanks, and hopefully that's been a helpful kind of jaunt through the renewable energy sector in the Highlands and Islands.
Thanks very much, Gavin. I was certainly noting a few things down there of maybe bits that I hadn't heard of, and I found it actually really helpful when you're sort of talking about sort of gigawatts of energy, what that means in terms of homes, because that's what I would think of. And I think that's certainly when you're trying to explain to children, if you're not measuring things in buses, it's trying to think in terms of number of houses and things like that. So that was really helpful, and I noted that one down as well. You mentioned the sort of the fact that it was obviously this growth sector, and there was a huge number of jobs opportunities, and there's a little bit in my head thinking, I know that some other sectors such as engineering have talked about that skills gap or skills shortages. Do you see enough people coming into the industry? Is it something where we need to still be promoting to get people in? So that's just kind of what I wanted to put to you just now.
Very much so. I mean, I think the pinch points as I'm seeing them, and the feedback that we're getting from particularly the offshore wind industry, but it's not limited to that. It's all across renewables. Is that it's engineers and technicians are in really short supply. And these are pretty attractive roles actually, because they're they're in quite an exciting environment. They do appeal to a broader part of the labour pool. Once we get into the whole piece around making some of the components required for these offshore wind farms, yes, they're going to be in factory environments, but they're not your black trades of old. These are technical equipment operator roles, so much more appealing. We're also talking in timelines that are sort of career choices. So an offshore wind farm will operate for 25 years plus. There are going to be a multitude of them, so you could go on to one and have a whole career on it, or you could find yourself working across a range of opportunities throughout the region and still being able to call the Highlands and Islands your home. So engineering technician roles are sort of a real pinch point as we see it, and one that, from my perspective, I couldn't commend highly enough to the youth of the region to explore with genuine interest.
That's great. Thank you, Gavin. And just again, highlighting earlier, I picked up when you talking about SDS's My World of Work and things as well. And that's certainly something that I used with children and young people of various ages when we're looking at what is engineering, what does that job mean, what skills are involved. And we used that, the My World of Work site, just looked up engineering, looked up the kind of top 5 skills and different kinds of engineering. And it was really interesting after doing a fun exercise of, asking the younger children to draw what they think an engineer looks like, which is obviously quite interesting because obviously there's a very high level PPE in all jobs involved in engineering if you're, 5 or 6 years old. So it's kind of trying to investigate more, but actually there might be lots of different things that you can do and lots of different kinds of roles. And again, picking up on what you said around different levels of going into these roles as well. You've got things through university, you've got things through college, you've also got different apprenticeship levels as well. So just highlighting those to the young people in school. Mark, did you have a question that you wanted to come in on?
I guess it may be quite hard, Gavin, for you to answer this or to know, but I'm working at the moment with Allness Academy quite a bit on some sustainability and renewables. And what's quite funny about some of that, just when we're talking about what's happening now, is there was that huge expanse of people who went up and worked at NIG. So there was obviously accommodation and all of that to do with the oil and gas industry. Does HIE have a feeling that there may be that sort of, not the exact same, but a sort of similar influx of people coming to work across the north? And in particular, I'm thinking Highlands. That is obviously something that's discussed quite often within education. How do we retain people? But are we actually maybe going to see an influx of people? Any idea on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Mark. I think that the kind of first influx that we had around oil and gas, and it was very much that there was 8,000 people between NIG and Ardersier, a really itinerant workforce. And I guess the upside from that, on reflection, maybe wasn't ideal, but the upside was that we had these world-class facilities, and the people that did stay and the companies that sprung up around that gave us an energy industry in the Highlands and Islands. We wouldn't have a renewables industry if it wasn't for that first oil and gas boom, and we wouldn't have this welding centres of excellence that we have, for example, that I directly translate into renewables manufacturing. So yes, there is the potential for a talent attraction with offshore wind, and the hope is that we're not going to see the same kind of numbers. Using the analogy of NIG and Ardersier, there's not going to be 5,000 people at NIG doing those types of roles, because there's going to be much higher levels of automation, facilities designed with process flow. So it's those types of higher value skills that are going to be required, and less of the hands-on physically manipulating pieces of steel and welding them together. So we should see some talent attraction potential, but because of the pipeline of opportunity, the real ambition and the reality we want to create is that there is this long-term sustainable high value opportunity that's driven on the back of it. So it's career kind of spanning opportunities rather than a sort of a pop-up, and we want to develop the industry in a way that we avoid having this requirement for a large itinerant workforce.
That's great. Thanks very much, Kevin. And I guess actually I'm joining you from Glasgow today, and part of the reason I'm asking that is I actually know a lot of guys that work on the rigs, work in oil and gas, work in energy, live here, and just want, and I remember it even, like my dad was thinking about doing it way back then. just whether that was something, and really to try and maybe focus when we talk to people here across the Highlands and Islands and the wider North is really about the benefits. One last thing I would say before we need to move on is I actually think that about the Welding Centre of Excellence, some of these, what we would call transferable skills, I guess, and whether it's supply chain, whether all these different things, that wider impact, I think, of this transformation of our energy system, really, really important. Quite often, I think that when we talk about energy, we talk about renewables, it's people have in their head wind turbine engineer, not much else. But actually, that company needs HR. That company needs these other aspects of it and these additional roles and jobs that really add to the economy. So thank you very much, Gavin. I'll pass it back to you, Jenny.
Thank you both. And I'll just start sharing my screen again. Okay, so next up we're going to hear from Leslie Buse, who is a quality manager at EMEC. So I'll pass over to Leslie.
Thank you, Janie. Thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Leslie Buse. I am the quality manager for the European Marine Energy Centre. So I'm based up here in Orkney in Kirkwall. Our main offices are actually through in Stromness, but it's not far from where I am. So as Gavin kind of mentioned earlier, marine energy, so renewable marine energy is the industry that we're in. So mainly wave, tidal, wave devices, tidal devices, floating wind, and more recently we've gotten involved in sort of hydrogen storage and things like that. So that's the kind of industry that we're working in. And oh, have I got control of the slide? There we go. So as a quality manager, that's my role within EMEC, and I've been the quality manager at EMEC for around about 8 years now. So as a quality manager, my role really is to look after EMEC's quality management system. So what the quality management system does at any organisation that implements one is it really acts as a framework for the organisation to work with, and really the goals are to make sure that the company achieves its aim. So in our case, we're aiming to be part of a successful marine energy industry, and to make sure that marine energy plays its part as part of the clean energy systems that we're obviously working towards as part of working towards net zero. So that's the one of the aims of our organisation. And then the other part to the quality management system is making sure that everything that we're doing is also delivering that quality product or service, whatever your organisation does, but delivering quality products and services to your client. And we also have, as part of this quality management system, we also have some accreditations and certifications with external bodies. So the United Kingdom Accreditation Service and DNVGL are our certification body at the moment. So they come and audit us against particular internationally recognised standards. They make sure that the work that we're doing is up to that standard and compliant with that standard, and that our management system is functioning properly and as it should. So that's kind of what my role is. We have health and safety in there at our management system, quality management, environmental management as well. So that's sort of all part of what I do. And a lot of the skills involved for my job, I suppose, are influencing skills. So I have to be able to sort of influence the rest of the organisation, sometimes working on the culture within the organisation and making sure that everybody's on board with the quality management system. I have to have good communication skills with internal parties, external parties, so external auditors as well, anybody else out with the organisation that I'm dealing with, so good communication skills. Leadership skills, like I say, when it comes to cultural changes, I have to sort of take the lead on things like that. A drive for improvement, so part of a quality management system is continually improving the organisation, finding ways to improve the way that we're working, keep up with the changes that are going on around us, make sure that we're sort of ahead of the game. obviously accuracy and attention to detail in this line of work is important. Also being able to embrace change. So as we're improving, then we have to put changes in place, and often people struggle with that. So I have to be there to help them with it. And planning and organising the way that we work, being sort of organised in the way that I work, are all sort of key skills really for my role as a quality manager. So my next slide really is about my route to EMEC. So I went to school here in Orkney. Kirkwall Grammar School was the school I went to, and at that point, you know, I wouldn't really have seen myself working in the renewables industry. It wasn't really something that was sort of seen as an option, but I knew I wanted to do something science-based. I was really interested in science when I was at school. So I went down and studied in Edinburgh at Napier University. So I did a degree in biomedical science. So it's quite a broad, covering a few different things from sort of immunology, microbiology, a bit of chemistry. So really, once I'd graduated, I was lucky enough to be able to come back to Orkney and was able to work for Scottish Water, doing really mainly microbiology. That was really what I did there for about 10 years. And Scottish Water also have accreditations with the United Kingdom Accreditation Service. So they also operate a quality management system. So I gained a lot of experience there. And going from biomedical science into microbiology, and then taking all of those transferable skills that I learned about quality management and about standards and accreditation into the job that I now do at EMEC. And obviously, you know, due to my 8 years at EMEC, I've carried on learning about the industry, about the renewables industry, about wave and tidal, and now, you know, going into hydrogen as well. So my learning has grown, and I've done, you know, lots more training and lots more learning in the time that I've been here at EMEC. Have I got one more? Yeah, so a day in the life of my job, the sort of things that I'm typically doing on a day-to-day basis at EMEC. I'm carrying out internal audits, dealing with external audits. So we have auditors that come to us, and I organise all of that and answer all their questions. Part of our quality management system is document control, so making sure that all of the documentation that we use is properly filed and controlled and available to everybody. And continual improvement is a big part of a quality management system. Risk management, health and safety, like I say, environmental management are all really parts of what I do on a day-to-day basis. And just something interesting that Gavin touched on there before was about the sort of male-female sort of gender split. So at EMEC, I'm happy to say that we have around about 60 employees, and we have around about a 50-50 split of male and female in our organisation, and that's sort of, you know, going through all levels. We have a female on our board of directors, a female executive director. We have women who are doing jobs like mine, more office-based, and then we also have women who are doing more operational work, so out on boats, actually out on the sites, working in the, you know, hydrogen electrolyzer and things like that. So I just thought that was interesting that you mentioned that, Gavin, before about the industry and the sort of gender split. And if anybody's interested in anything more about EMEC, I think there's a link on the last. I can put a link in the chat to the website if that's helpful.
That's great. Thank you very much, Leslie. The first thing I spotted there was it's the same degree as me in an entirely different pathway from that, which is just quite an interesting one. Mark, is there any questions in the chat at the moment?
There's no chat. There's no questions in the chat at the moment. I guess I've got one, Leslie. One that I quite often use when I'm discussing chatting about this with people from industry, etc. You're a bit closer to, I guess, our client group than definitely me. Anyway, tell you that. If you were to give one bit of advice to a young person that was thinking about moving into this field, and we've heard from Gavin there, we've heard about the expansion, we've heard all of that. Is there one piece of advice that perhaps you would advise a young person to do? Give you an example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. So my background, I was a ranger, zoologist, that kind of thing. The one bit of advice we always gave young people was get volunteering, get a bit of that under your belt, and then suddenly you stand out when it comes to getting that first job. So is there anything that you would maybe suggest, Leslie, a wee bit of advice that we could give young people?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we have had interns, and we've taken on a lot of interns in the time that I've been at EMEC, and a lot of those interns have gone on to then actually get jobs. One of our senior managers actually started off as an intern, and she's actually been at EMEC longer than I had. So there's, to look, and it's often not that we're actually going out looking for them. People have approached us, and opportunities have come about. So definitely reaching out, speaking to other people in the industry, finding out about their jobs, and don't be put off by anybody else. I suppose really more for younger people. When I was in secondary school, I remember being told that science was not for me, and well, it's
The rest is
yeah.
history. The rest is history, definitely. I think that's really useful, and actually for me, just even that simple message of saying to our young people, be proactive, reach out, do a bit of research. Who would I like to work for? Do you know what I mean? It may be some young people down here in Glasgow go, I'd be really interested in working some of this research and development, or I'd quite like to go and live in Orkney for a bit as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got people who have come from all over the world. One of our latest employees actually came from Trinidad and Tobago. We've got people who have come from all over the world to work at EMEC, and they've moved all the way to Orkney just to work for EMEC. It's incredible.
Yeah, I have to admit, last time I was up in Kirkwall, I did actually notice that, and maybe I'm coming with all my Central Belt biases there, but fantastic place and far more diversity, perhaps, than I definitely expected. So fantastic. That was great, Leslie. Thanks very much. Is there any other questions for Leslie? You can stick them in the chat if you want, and we can come back to them anyway. I see that Alan's typing away there as well at the moment, so it's always a thing, isn't it? It's like WhatsApp as well.
Just speak up to save myself typing.
I was about to say that, Alan.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm a D&T teacher at Mackay Academy in Stonehaven, and we got ourselves involved at the beginnings of the Accelerate program with the Wood Group. It's early days yet, but one of my, I've been teaching for many years, and one of my issues has always been the gender imbalance. And as part of the Accelerate program, I'm hoping to try and put together a set of resources that will act as a go-to focal point to not only let kids investigate what engineering has on offer for them, but also showcase examples of maybe with a positive bias towards females working in engineering. So imagine, if you will, a spider diagram of roles, and the kids being able to click on the links to hear people talking about it. Now, I'd like to do it this way rather than getting guest speakers in, because if I get a guest speaker in, it targets 20 kids and it happens once and then it's done and it's gone. So I'm basically putting a request out here to make contact with people that would be willing to be interviewed or prepare video presentations of themselves and explain their roles, how they got there, and that we could then use as part of this resource for our people to use.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
Sorry, Leslie. Obviously, you've got Leslie's just signed up there. That's excellent, Alan.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more people that you make too. You might know my friend Jane Tullock. She's probably
I know Jane.
From Orkney too. Yeah.
Alan, if that's okay, could we catch up about that between myself and Janie and you? And obviously, Leslie's just signed up there. And for us, and Gavin's got his hand up there as well, just to sort of plan that out. There's lots of other ones as well that I'm aware of. I'm thinking even some games designers that I know as well, which is quite a gender thing. And I think I've done a lot of work on this in Glasgow, and what was fascinating for me was this gender split, how bad it is in engineering is a UK and US problem. It doesn't seem to be wider than that, and definitely parts of Europe, the split is actually the other way. Not to the extent of us, but if we look perhaps at former Eastern European countries, as we call them, Yeah, it's 55, 45 and female. So it's a cultural thing, I think, that we've got here. So would that be okay, Alan, if we
Yes, please, yes.
We start planning that, and we'll get other people lined up for you as well?
Excellent. That's a great result. Yes.
Great. I'm just going to move on now to our last speaker, who is Grace Ann Robertson, who is Marketing Manager at Verloom. I think I've said that correctly, Grace Ann. You're on mute, Grace Ann. Grace Ann, I'm still got you on mute.
That is just a classic. I would have been over that by now, the amount of Teams calls that we do. Sorry. I was just saying thank you for the invite to present tonight, Janie, and nice to see you all on the call. My name is Grace Ann, and I'm the Marketing Manager for Verloom, which literally as of today has changed its name. We were previously known as ECOG, which stood for East Coast Oil and Gas Engineering. So as Gavin and Leslie have said, there's a lot of talk about renewables, clean energy, which we do a lot of work within, and we've sort of changed our name to better reflect what we do in the clean energy space, sort of moving on from our background in oil and gas into the opportunities that we see going forward in the sector. So if we just move on to the next slide, please. So in terms of what Verloom does, we were founded in 2013 and we're based in Aberdeen. So we are a leader in intelligent energy management and storage technologies. So basically what that means is we work with batteries and energy storage, and we've developed technologies to intelligently manage how those batteries operate and integrate with external equipment, whether that be oil and gas infrastructure or renewables infrastructure, such as offshore wind farms or service vessels. That could be battery or hybrid electric service vessels. So effectively what we're doing as a company is helping our clients to reduce their carbon footprint, which is becoming a real focus of pretty much all companies, even without, out with, if I could speak, out with energy, around how to decarbonise their operations and what they do. You'll find that a lot of companies that are renewable companies, operators as well, they're focusing on decarbonising operations. A lot of what you don't see is the kind of reliance on diesel generators in terms of what they do as part of their day-to-day operations. So that's really what we're focusing on in sectors such as underwater, offshore, and also the onshore sector. So yeah, I'll explain now just a little bit about myself and my background. So I graduated from the University of Aberdeen in 2016. I did a joint honours degree in French and business management. And as part of my degree, I spent 1 year abroad in Caen, in Normandy, in the north of France, where I was studying in French as part of a European business management course. So that was really good to get exposure to the French way of life, but also a lot of international students who, you know, I've kept in touch with since and are connected with on LinkedIn, that kind of thing. So that was really useful for me. In my third year, or after my third year of university, I took part in an internship programme through the Saltire Foundation, which is now known as Entrepreneurial Scotland. So what that internship programme does is connect sort of the highest calibre undergraduate students in Scotland with the most up-and-coming Scottish-based or Scottish-founded businesses, so that they can access the kind of up-and-coming talent. And also on my side and on the student side could experience that kind of thriving environment of innovation, entrepreneurial spirit, and take on projects of real significance in terms of what the company was doing. So as part of my internship, it's really where I started sort of getting interested in the energy sector. I was working for a company called Petrotechnics in a sort of sales business development role, and that company at the time was looking at risk management in the energy sector, oil and gas specifically, but also the transport sector. So after having done that internship, I sort of knew that I wanted to go in to do something around energy, and I also developed a real interest in small or smaller companies, SMEs, just as a way for experiencing the real kind of day-to-day life of how these businesses operate, and also taking the opportunities that you might not get in a bigger organisation. So after I completed my final year of university, I went and took part in a Santander University's SME internship. So effectively what that was a Santander funded an internship for me at ECOG. I think it was a 12-week internship, which was really good for me in terms of getting that experience of what I'd picked up in my degree, the kind of theoretical knowledge, and then putting it into practice within ECOG in the role of a marketing intern. So after that internship, I was taken on full-time. So that's how I kind of came into energy full-time as a role. And I was at ECOG from 2016 until 2019. I then left ECOG for a couple of years to go and work at a marketing agency, which was also based within the energy sector, to get a wider understanding of how other companies, bigger sort of oil and gas energy companies, operated around marketing, and get a sense of how the sector was moving. And then in July last year, I was asked to come back into ECOG to really drive forward, what the company is doing in terms of these opportunities within the energy transition. So as of July last year, I've been the marketing manager for Verilum, as we are now. So I'll just move on to my final slide, which is a day in the life. So I've put a picture on the left-hand side of a megaphone, and I like to think myself and the business development team are the people at the kind of left-hand side of that, with the ladders and the computers, working on the behind the scenes, the kind of strategy, the messaging, all the planning that goes into what you see on a day-to-day basis from a company. So the communications, the external piece of how we communicate as a company with the energy industry, with our clients, but also more widely, and how we fit into the energy transition conversation. So as I said, a lot of it is around the communication piece. So I'm often writing press releases, such as the press release example that I've got on screen. Verilum, our HALO system, our subsea energy storage system, is taking part in a really exciting world first trial in Hawaii, which I'm trying to get an invite to go to. But what that's doing is integrating our system with a wave energy device from a company called Seapower, an American wave energy developer. And we connect our energy storage system in with that. And the output is for autonomous underwater vehicles, sort of like a subsea garage for inspection vehicles in the subsea environment. So, there's a lot of good news and exciting projects that we do, and it's my role on a day-to-day basis to make sure that people hear about them and get updates from us in terms of what we're doing. So that might be through press releases, that might be my engagement with the press, speaking to journalists. It could be writing blogs that are of interest to our clients. It involves a lot of Teams calls, particularly with what we've gone through over the last few years amongst the team, getting a flavour of what projects are upcoming, how we can plan to promote them, but also externally as well, speaking to some of our stakeholders just in terms of updating them on what we're doing, and also getting updates from them and how we could potentially get involved in wider initiatives. a lot of my time recently has been taken up with the rebrand. So I'm taking a company that's quite well known for being ECOG and pulling it into a completely different company, coming up with the name and working with people within the company to get the sort of idea generation side of things going. So yeah, there's been a lot of that recently. And thankfully, and finally, maybe I'll say, we are going to be doing an in-person exhibition event in Aberdeen at the end of next month in February. So I'll be involved in planning for that. So that's sort of like our stand presence, presentations, preparing abstracts, award entries. We're a finalist in the innovation and technology category at the awards at the Subsea Expo. So there's a lot of sort of preparation work that I do on a daily basis for a range of different things. It's a lot of sort of spinning plates, but overall what I'm trying to do is present the image of who we are and what we're doing and where we want to go.
Thank you very much, Grace-Anne. That are really interesting, and I'm sure that we'll have some questions for you. I'll pass over to Mark.
We don't have any questions in the chat as yet, Grace-Anne, but I mean, I've definitely got one for you. So, talked a lot there about the communications and I guess the marketing, a really fascinating role so far for you. It's been great. And it was interesting, again, to see that role of internships, perhaps, in your career journey so far. So again, I think that's quite an important message we can get out there for young people. But I guess, what would you, as a marketing and communications person then, what's the one message you would give, not young people necessarily, but one of the key influencers, which are families and parents, etc. What's the sort of like one message you would give to them about the future of energy as an industry and as a career pathway, etc. And in particular, I'm thinking about people from across the north, so all the way from Campbelltown, which I know is not that north, but it is for us, all the way from Campbelltown up to Shetland, to Aberdeen and the Western Isles. So what was the one message you would give them to encourage them to think about it?
I think it's the opportunities that are involved in the sector, particularly with having COP26 in Glasgow in November. I think that really sort of shone a spotlight on Scotland as being at the forefront of the energy transition. And I think, I mean, with the oil and gas background, particularly in Aberdeen, we are known for that. And there's a really interesting journey, I think, for the likes of me in marketing and communications in presenting that transition of how, as a few people had mentioned earlier, how we can transfer skills from the likes of oil and gas into the energy transition. So like our company is a lot of subsea engineers, so they've got experience with working with, control valves, subsea installations, but it's really thinking wider on these skills, rather than it being an industry specific job. It's thinking around where are the skills that people can transfer and actually really contribute to moving forward technical innovations. Like our team, as I said, oil and gas background, but we are doing some of the world's most innovative battery technology for energy applications. So when I'm talking to people coming into the industry, it's like, you can be a part of that. And these are things that we're doing, they're firsts, and you can be part of it now and seeing it growing. I think I'm excited to be in the industry, and I think we need to communicate more around where these opportunities are and also how to get there. And it's that question of, what does an engineer look like? And there's a certain perception of that. It's like, what does somebody who works in the energy industry look like? And it's trying to get that message out of there are so many different roles that people can be doing. It doesn't need to be somebody maintaining an offshore wind farm. There are just so many different elements within operators, within any energy company, so just the opportunities. I think that's the kind of key message I'd say.
That's an excellent point, Grace-Anne. Yeah, just the wealth of opportunities, and I guess maybe work in other parts of the world as well, I think can be quite an attractive thing, which leads me on to, I guess, Debbie's question there about So she's presuming or guessing you're going to be bilingual, and I think we're all going to presume that. Has your language skills then benefited you in your career? I think it's a great point, Debbie.
Yeah, so initially when I started at ECOG, I was lucky enough to go on a few trips abroad to exhibitions around ocean energy. So I went to a couple of the Ocean Energy Europe events. Sorry, is my screen frozen?
You're
Can you
fine.
still hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
I can still hear you.
Yeah, so I went to an event in France and I went to an event in Belgium where I was really able to develop relationships with the people that I was meeting on the stands because I could speak the language. But I also think, it's worth considering for people that did study language is the way that we are taught to, pay attention to the minute details of accents, of agreements, and that is really useful in my day-to-day role in terms of writing. I hardly ever make typos because I know how to use that to my advantage. And it's things like that. Again, skills transfer is like, where can you pull out where you've got experience into the roles that people need?
Love that, Grace, and that idea of actually language has made you really accurate and actually for a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in engineering, that's what we're looking for, isn't it? So love that. That's fantastic. Leslie's also commented just to say as well that she's really enjoyed hearing from both rather different pathways, in fact, very different pathways. And again, I think that is such an important message to get out there to young people. I don't want to hark on about me, but so one thing I always talk about is no one ever talked to me about a pathway in school. It was a long, long time ago. But that concept of where'd you go next and after that and think, it wasn't there. So we've been building our paths as we go along, and I don't know if we're going in the right direction. But let's park that at the moment. So I'm just going to pass over. We've only got a few minutes left, so I'll pass back over to Jenny. So thanks very much, Grace-Ann. That was great.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks for all the comments and things in the chat as well. Yeah, I find that particularly interesting, seeing the different pathways that people have gone through as well. And again, it's something that wasn't really talked about in most of the time when I was at school, was actually that what you start off in may not be where you end up a few years down the line. And it's really interesting and really exciting to kind of hear these different pathways. I'm going to share a couple of slides again, one of which is I always feel the kind of mandatory plenary slide. Just a reminder to those attending today's session, we'd be always eternally grateful if you could complete the webinar evaluation. I have used a QR code. I can pop it into the chat if people prefer, and I'll do that shortly. But I've got a bit of a fan of a QR code now. But one of the things I always like to do as well, and it's not for just now, but really just when you go away from today's session, in terms of when you're stepping into your classroom, what from today's made you think? What have you felt? Is there something you didn't find interesting? Is something you're going to remember and take away and take with you when you go into your classrooms tomorrow? So that's kind of one of the key things for me at the end of a session. And finally, just a reminder that we actually have an entire series of these sessions, and we are planning to record all of them as well. But we do appreciate people coming along to ask questions, to find out more. So in February, we're going to be focusing on agriculture, March, forestry, April, technologies, May, life and chemical sciences, and rounding up in June with the food and drink sector. So the key thing here has been that the focus has been on some growth sectors across the Northern Alliance. So hopefully you'll be able to make it along to some of those sessions as well. To sign up, just go to events at Education Scotland, search for STEM. You will see this programme, you'll see our other STEM in the North programme. If you have primary colleagues, there's also a primary STEM series that's going on. And there's been things for early years and things as well. So feel free to pass on that information to friends and colleagues and make sure they know that we're here and we're here to support them with all aspects of STEM. And finally, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone that has come along today and presented. It's been a really interesting and informative evening for me. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing the videos as well that Ian's going to be putting together later for us. And we'll put those up onto our website, which is stemnation.scot. So if anyone's looking for anything there, you will find us in the professional learning section. We'll be putting it onto the DYW page that we have going on there. So That's rounded up perfectly, just a few minutes to 6. So thank you all for coming and have a lovely evening.